Hello everybody, today is the Oscars, at least for me. I don't know when this video is going to come out, but tonight is the Oscars. I don't know what's going to win, I don't know what's going to lose, but I thought it was a good day to rank every single movie I saw of 2024. And I saw a lot, let me tell ya. I saw 100 movies in fact, and we're going to rank every single one of them. There's a couple things I want to say before I start the video. Most importantly, there are time codes in the description, so if you would like to skip ahead and watch me talk about any particular movie from the year, you can use those to find whatever movie you want to hear me talk about. And secondly, I'd like to rant about something. Multiple people have come up to me this year, probably like 15 people have said to me at some point during 2024/2025, they've gone up to me and said, 2024 was a really bad year for movies, huh? Movies aren't good anymore, I guess, right? 2024 was not a bad year for movies. In fact, I think it is the best year for movies in the past 10 years. 2022 was really good, 2019 was really good, but this for me has been the best year for movies in a long time. And to be fair, I'm a little biased. I've seen 100 of them. But stop saying it's a bad year for movies. It's never a bad year for movies. You will never catch me saying that because every year great movies come out. You just have to go out and find them. But thankfully for you, if you're complaining about this being a bad year, you have me. I'm going to start this video off by telling you about every single movie I recommend from 2024, and if you don't find something you like, something's wrong with you. So here we go. Every movie I would give a 3.5 stars or more to. Let's start with Dune Part 2. I gave Dune Part 1 a really good review on my channel a few years ago when it came out. Since then, I don't think I am as big a fan of the franchise. I honestly find the stories in these movies kind of incomprehensible at times. But I do actually think I like the first one more. Most people seem to like the second one a lot more. I found the story a little easier to follow in the first one, so I think I like that movie a little more. But just because the story is occasionally incomprehensible for me, there's still amazing effects, amazing cinematography, amazing costume design. Just the world in general looks great. It's really cool. I want to love these movies, but I just don't. Maybe I'll read the book one day and watch them again. I'd like to watch them again, give them another try to figure them out, but as of right now, it's just not a story that really satisfied me or invested me that much because I had trouble knowing what was going on. Dune fans, though, I'm sure this movie was amazing. At number 35, we have The Wild Robot. I've made a review of this already, so you can go find that on my channel. But anyways, I won't go into too much depth. I enjoyed it. I thought it was a cute movie. I thought it was very ambitious. I think if you're a fan of kids films and animation in general, this is a great movie. There are aspects that are cliche and kind of dumb. There's this music sequence that I don't like, this like pop song that's terrible. There are some animation choices that I don't like, but overall, I really enjoyed it. Next, we have a movie called Anyone Else But Me. This was made by a YouTuber who has made 12 movies this year. I've watched every single one. His name is Joel Haver, and this is my favorite of the 12. Making 12 movies in a year is an incredible feat on its own, but I think what's more incredible is how good some of these are. I thought this movie was really funny. It's about an improv comedy troupe, and one of the members starts acting during his like Tinder dates, and the movie ends up combining this story about different aspiring actors with this like Coen Brothers-esque crime plot. Out of all the Joel Haver movies that came out this year, I thought this one was the most consistently engaging and entertaining for me, and I also just thought there was a lot of scenes that were very like layered in terms of combining different ideas in clever ways. I was really impressed that this only took a month to make. It was really good. At number 33, we have Problemista. This is the feature-length debut of Julio Torres. He also stars in the movie, and I feel like I sensed a little bit of ego from that. His character is an immigrant from Mexico City who is trying to become a toy manufacturer or designer. And he meets Tilda Swinton, who is one of my favorite actors ever. But she kind of plays like a Karen-esque character who is trying to get an art exhibition, and her husband is like frozen in like a cryo chamber. I adore this story on paper. I thought it was really funny. In practice, it's not quite as good. I wish it pushed for that like absurdity more. A lot of the scenes are very dialogue heavy. The Tilda Swinton character was occasionally a little bit annoying for me, but overall, it was a fun movie with a lot of creativity, a lot of style. It's an amazing feature debut, and I really liked the message by the end. At number 32, we have The King Tide. No one's seen this movie. I heard Red Letter Media talk about it, so I decided to watch it. And yeah, more people need to watch this. It's a movie about a group of people who have decided to live on their own on an island, so they're completely cut off from the outside world. And a baby washes up on the island on like a little tiny boat, and it has healing powers. So whenever you're near it, your wounds heal. Like more abstract things like Alzheimer's or dementia heals. If you have a hangover, you can like heal by being near this baby. And it becomes kind of culty, but in like a clever way. It's not really a horror movie. It's more of like a thriller or drama. And overall, I like the concept. I love how out there it is. And I don't know, I thought it was really good. Some of the child performances aren't that great, but overall the performances were pretty good. I'm not crazy about the ending, but yeah, I feel like most of the choices that were made for the story were pretty intelligent ones. At number 31, we have Wallace and Gromit, Vengeance Most Fowl. I really like Wallace and Gromit movies, and this movie has pretty much everything about them that appeals to me. It's very funny, it's very well animated, and it's very English. It also doesn't feel cynical at all, which this movie definitely could have felt because it's a movie about like technology and how it's ruining our lives. But it does it in a way that's simplistic and works for me. It's so easy to tackle that concept and become preachy or pessimistic, but the way they tackled it in this movie was just really fun. Don't know how I'd rank it with the other Wallace and Gromit films. Wallace is pretty unlikable in this one, which is sad, but I don't know. I think it is a great entry to the franchise. Next, we have a movie called Sujo. This is about a boy who is orphaned because of cartel violence. And while there's like themes of violence throughout the entire movie, this isn't like some disgusting thriller or hard to watch movie. It's actually very, what's the word? I don't want to say sweet, but like sentimental. It's a sentimental movie. I really liked the tone of it. There's some really good audio mixing, some kind of bad audio mixing. But overall, really good performances. I like the visual style of the film a lot. I really like the ending. It's a very good movie, so check it out, because no one's seen this movie either. Next, we have The Room Next Door. This is starring Julianne Moore and Tilda Swinton. It also has John Turturro in the movie. It's very dialogue-heavy, but it kind of works for this movie. The film is about both Julianne Moore and Tilda Swinton, I believe, are journalists or authors. And so a lot of the dialogue is like very poetic, but basically they haven't seen each other in a while, and Tilda Swinton is suffering from cancer and basically is trying to decide whether or not to like euthanize herself. And this would come off like a really dark movie, and I probably wouldn't recommend it if you have like a family member who currently has cancer or anything, but it actually was like kind of funny. It didn't really have a very serious tone a lot of the time. And was very easy to watch. I was never like crying or anything. I was mostly laughing, actually. I really liked the performances. I thought the pacing was really good. Yeah, it's a very dialogue heavy movie again. You probably don't need the visuals for certain parts of this movie, but I really liked it. Next, we have Flow. This is a movie without any dialogue in it, in which the ocean levels are rising and a group of animals attempt to survive. So with that description, you can probably make connections to like climate change, and I think that connection is intentional. However, it doesn't beat you over the head with it. It's not like preachy or anything. You could honestly not interpret it that way. It's just a movie where ocean levels are rising like really rapidly and a bunch of animals are on a boat, and it's very cute. There are aspects to this movie that are like blatantly fantastical, and it doesn't explain itself at all. It doesn't have to. A lot of the visuals are just gorgeous, like breathtaking visually. Great animation in this movie. Apparently it was all done on Blender, and it has that video game look, but yeah, it still looks beautiful. One of my favorite aspects was the sound design. That really helped my immersion in the environments in the movie. It's a cute movie about a bunch of animals on a boat. How can you not enjoy that? Next we have Better Man. This is the Robbie Williams biopic where he is a monkey. And the fact that he's a CGI monkey is never addressed by any of the characters. The fact that he's a monkey changes nothing. And yet it changes everything. Because this is always going to be the monkey biopic movie in my mind and everybody's mind. I literally, like, lie in bed and think to myself, oh my god, they made a movie where a guy was a CGI monkey for kind of no reason. It's the best biopic I've seen in a while. I love the way he's portrayed in this movie. He's very unlikable. There's a lot of amazing, like, musical set pieces that I thought were very impressive. I also like the fact that they kind of show what inspires the songs that he wrote, but they don't do it in, like, a way that's really bad. I feel like most times movies try to do that, like try to show you like how this person wrote this song. They fictionalize it in a way that's really dumb. And while it's a little cliche and cheesy in this movie, or at least it can come off this way, it feels so much more genuine and worked a lot better for me. I love the presentation of kind of showing like what inspired these songs and the way it doesn't really like spell it out for you. It just kind of like lets you watch aspects of your life and you can very easily make the connections yourself. I'm really sad this made no money because I actually really enjoyed this movie. Next we have A Different Man. Don't mix these movies up, but the more I've thought about this movie, the more I've liked it. I think I originally gave it a 3 out of 5, but yeah, it's grown on me. It's a movie about people with facial disfigurements, but I more so saw it as a movie that was kind of analyzing human happiness and whether or not we have control over our own happiness. In the movie, Sebastian Stan gets a surgery to remove his facial disfigurements, and at first it feels like that is the only thing troubling him, and that maybe if he looked different, he would be a different person, he would be happier, he would be more confident, but he actually isn't able to change at all. I love the music, I really loved a lot of the performances. I don't love every scene in the movie, there are some that felt kind of unnecessary for me. The movie is probably a little overly long, the ending was kind of sloppy, but I also feel like there's a lot of very engaging moments, and I think the commentary of the movie overall was something I thought about a lot after watching it. At number 25, we have The Apprentice. This is the Trump biopic, which I've already reviewed on this channel, so if you want to see that, to hear me talk about this more. I like the angle it took of only analyzing Trump from, like, up to, like, the 80s or something. It's more about Trump's rise to wealth, and it's treated like a villain origin story. I love the directing a lot. I really like the acting. I like that Sebastian Stan wasn't doing like an impression. He wasn't really trying to, but he was still giving a really good performance, which is kind of like a hard act to balance. But I thought he did a really good job, and he's had a great year. But both of the leads are really great. Jeremy Strong is really great in this movie. Not every single scene is a strong one. There's some I think that could probably be cut out. But overall, I thought it was really effective. At number 24, we have Queer. This is one of the 2 movies this year that was directed by one of my favorite directors, Luca Guadagnino. I have very mixed feelings on this movie, and I think if I rewatched it, I may like it a lot more. Or maybe I'll be much more harsh towards it. I had kind of a weird experience at the theater, but the more I thought about it, the more it grew on me. It's based on a book by William S. Burroughs, and I think the movie kind of expects you know a little bit about him. Maybe even have read the book to fully understand what's happening at certain points. One of my favorite movies is Cronenberg's Naked Lunch, which is also based on a book by William S. Burroughs, and there's a lot of parallels between these 2 movies. On one hand, that helped me because I was already a fan of adapting this guy's books and kind of understood a bit about him and his background. But on the other hand, I felt like I had seen some of these ideas done better. It took me a while to get into it. The first, like, third, or maybe even, like, the first half is kind of slow for me. But I felt like the second half, it really took a turn, and I was connecting with a lot of the ideas a lot more. I feel like the movie has a little more of a direction for the second half. Anyways, this movie is always technically proficient. The soundtrack / score is really great. It's one of my favorites of the year. Daniel Craig is really, really good in this movie. Again, Luca Guadagnino is one of the best directors working today. There's a lot about this movie that stuck with me, but there's also a lot of parts that I felt were meandering and I didn't really enjoy. So, again, very mixed feelings, but I want to see it again. At number 23, we have Nosferatu. This movie reminds me a lot of like a theme park ride, because there's a lot of great atmospheric stuff, great production design, really cool visuals. It's very much about creating that world and that vibe, and that kind of immersion felt kind of like theme parky to me. Scenes also transition together in really cool ways. All the actors give very cool performances. It's just a really cool experience as a viewer. But you definitely feel like an observer rather than someone who's a part of the horror that's going on in this movie. And as a result, I don't really find this narrative that compelling. None of the characters really have agency over the situation, and you pretty much know that from the beginning. So it feels like a lot of the events in this movie don't really matter story-wise. I know Robert Eggers is good at balancing great characters and great atmosphere. I love The Lighthouse, but I don't know if this was really accomplished here. I feel like this movie much more was focused on the atmospheric stuff, and that was awesome. It's really great in pretty much every aspect of that. I will say, though, the movie's desaturated look didn't always look that great for me. There are certain points where I kind of just wish this was straight up in black and white. There are lots of shots that are in, like, silhouette, which looked really cool, but sometimes I thought it was a little bit too much for me. There's a lot of fog in the movie, very little contrast in the color grading, and some of the visuals looked a little undefined to me because of that. But there's also lots of elements of the cinematography and lighting that are genuinely Oscar-worthy, so I don't think Robert Eggers will ever get an Oscar, but I hope he does. Next we have Porcelain War. This is a documentary about the conflicts between Ukraine and Russia, and I thought it was really, really good. Sometimes I think they had a bit of a hard time managing the tone of the movie, because half of this movie is like really brutal war footage, and the other half is sort of this celebration of Ukrainian culture and art and creativity. The main characters who also filmed the movie are artists, and they're very, very talented, and it was so cool to see like the process of making these little porcelain figurines that they make and painting them. There's animation on them that was really cool. I have no idea how they did that animation on the figures. It looked awesome. The music is really great, but I think that kind of gets back to the tone thing I'm talking about. Sometimes the music over the war footage felt kind of inappropriate, but still, it's very good. There's a lot I really, really love about this movie, obviously conceptually. I think most people would really, really enjoy this movie, so go check it out. Next I have Nickel Boys. This movie is higher on a lot of people's lists. I think if I read the book or watched the movie again, I'd probably like it a lot more. But for this first watch, there were a couple things that were really impeding my enjoyment of it. First off, I went into this movie completely blind. I knew it was based on a Colson Whitehead book, but I didn't really know what the book was about at all, and I think having context for what this movie is and the real event that it's based on will help your experience a lot. The way this movie is structured, it takes you a while to understand what's going on and where it's going, and the way information is often conveyed is pretty confusing at points. This movie is shot entirely from the character's POV, and that was incredible. Some of the most impressive cinematography I have seen all year. It never looked bad, it never looked fake, which is so hard to do. I'm really blown away by that aspect of the film. At first though, I kind of felt like this aspect was getting in the way of my emotional involvement with the characters, but at the end, it was very much helping my experience. The ending is honestly one of the most riveting things I've seen all year. There's amazing scene transitions, there's a lot of great performances, there's a lot I really loved about this movie, and I think if I rewatched it, I'd probably love it a lot more, but man, it's really long, and I don't really feel like it justified that length. Next we have I'm Still Here. A lot of people are also really loving this movie more than I am. There's a lot I do love about it. I really, really thought the ending was super strong. I think there's a big event in the middle that's portrayed really well. But there's a lot of scenes in this movie that just were not that engaging for me. And perhaps if I saw it again, I would like it more, because I think if you have knowledge of where it's going and what's going to happen to the characters, those moments would involve me emotionally a little bit more. But personally, there are some moments, especially during like the first third of the movie, that I just really was not that engaged. Fernanda Torres gives an amazing performance though. I love the look of the movie. The cinematography is very saturated and colorful and kind of has that 70s look. But all the performances are really good, actually. Even, like, there's a lot of kids in this movie that give really great performances. And that ending is a tearjerker. So yeah, I think I would really recommend this movie, even if I personally didn't enjoy it as much as a lot of people. I think it gets better as it goes along, and I think that's preferable than a movie that gets worse as it goes along. Or maybe I take that back, because this next movie, The Seed of the Sacred Fig, does just that. It gets worse as it goes along. And it's not gradually getting worse. This is a nearly 3-hour movie, and the first, 2.5 hours were great. Excellent filmmaking and storytelling. I was never bored. I was never worried about the length of the movie. The way the story unraveled was just so engaging for the first 2.5 hours. It was so good. But then the last, 15 minutes, there's a point where I literally felt like I was watching, a gag from a Scooby-Doo movie. This movie's about Iran and the political climate there. It was controversial, so the actors had to flee the country, and this movie had to be distributed by Germany. But great subject matter, very important subject matter, and again, the first 2.5 hours are excellent. That's why I'm putting it this high on the list. Even though this movie is going to be remembered by me and many people as having kind of a sloppy, not very good ending, it is so good for the majority. And maybe I'm being a little too harsh. Maybe the ending isn't quite as bad as what I'm saying. But it kind of felt like a different movie. And man, if this had a strong ending, I'd give this a 4.5 stars, because I was loving almost everything about it. The only thing I didn't like was the color grading. The performances are really good. It's a really good movie overall, and it's a shame that the ending was the way it was. At number 18, we have Kinds of Kindness. This movie was a little bit of a head scratcher for me, but I do feel like I could easily rewatch it at pretty much any point. Yorgos Lanthimos is one of my favorite directors working today. This might be his worst movie, honestly, but I still really, really enjoyed it. It's a 3-part anthology, so it's 3 different stories, and there's really not much connecting them, but I think the aspects that are connecting them are kind of what makes this movie fascinating to me. Also, it's the same actors for every single one, so it's always Emma Stone, Jesse Plemons, Willem Dafoe, Margaret Qualley, and they're some of my favorite actors working today, so that alone made this movie very enjoyable for me. All of these stories are pretty consistent in quality. There's not one I favor a lot more than the rest, or one I hated at all. They're all very funny and uncomfortable. The first is probably the strongest, I think, maybe, especially in terms of, pacing. The second one might be my least favorite, and the third one is, I think, somewhere in between. Again, the first one has great editing, pacing, and escalation of events, and has this domineering relationship between Willem Dafoe and Jesse Plemons. It's really funny. The second one had the best concept, but I don't know if I find it really that interesting after that concept is introduced. There are some funny parallels to dogs in this segment that I thought was very clever. If you're curious what I mean by that, you could ask in the comments and I'll explain to you exactly what I mean. I had this revelation while watching the movie Bolt. The third story has more engaging storytelling than the second, but I think less than the first. I felt like it could have been longer, and I felt like it ended kind of abruptly. I wanted a little more explanation for certain things in that third story, but there's some really cool visuals in the third one especially. Emma Stone is the best in the third one. It's a really cool movie and kind of a dream come true in a lot of ways for me. Next, at number 17, we have Soundtrack to a Coup d'etat. This is a documentary about the colonizing of the Congo by the United States and Belgium in 1960, and I don't know if it's really a good introduction to this event for people who aren't aware of it, but it's also just so well edited, and it combines this amazing soundtrack, this jazz classical soundtrack, so well with the events that take place in the movie. It uses these songs, these Louis Armstrong songs, and also has these interviews about people like Louis Armstrong being the ambassadors of America to the Congo. And there's such a great synergy between combining these ideas and editing it to that music. It just has this great energy, so much great interview footage, so much great archival footage. It's all just put together incredibly well. Perhaps it's a little too long for me. There are definitely some parts that drag, but it's a very, very good movie. Still hard for people who are not history buffs or anything, which I'm not really. This was kind of my introduction to a lot of these events, but it's pretty great. Alright, we've made it to the 4-star films. We're gonna start with Ren Faire. This kind of isn't a film. It's a 3-part miniseries, 3 episodes, but in total, it's like 3 hours long, so I want to include it in this video. If it's on Letterboxd, I can put it in the video. Who cares? The director of this series, Lance Oppenheim, is easily now one of my favorite documentary filmmakers. Maybe my favorite. He has another movie that made this list that I will talk about shortly, but he is just an incredible documentary filmmaker. He makes these documentaries incredibly informative, incredibly interesting, but they also feel like narratives. They never felt documentary-ish to me at all. This movie is like a retelling of Shakespeare's King Lear with real people who are trying to take over a Renaissance festival. The 3 main characters, George, who is the current king of the Renaissance festival, Jeff and Louis, who are the two guys who are trying to take over it, they're just really well-defined characters by the filmmakers. Jeff seems like a really nice guy, but he's so obsessed with becoming king that you're like wondering, does this guy really have it in him? And then Louis seems really unlikable. In a lot of ways, you start to question, though, like, is this film kind of portraying this guy in, like, too bad of a light? Is it kind of manipulating our emotions for a reveal at the end that maybe he's not all that bad and he would be a good king? It's hard. You kind of start to question things. And George, the current king, is just fucking crazy. He's incredibly sexist, he's gross, he's extremely egotistical, fascinating human being, and I love the amount of time they were able to capture in this movie. I think they filmed at least like 2 or 3 years, something like that. I don't know, but it is an amazing documentary. Next, we have a documentary called No Other Land. This is about the Israel-Palestine conflict, and it was completed in October of 2023. Yeah. So obviously after that happened, they added to the documentary. I wish they actually went further with the stuff post-October 2023, because you become very attached to a lot of these characters, and I kind of wanted to see how they reacted to it. Mostly very, very poorly, and the movie ends in a very depressing way. There was just this feeling of, like, hopelessness in the theater when we all left, but, yeah, this is a hard-to-watch documentary at a lot of points. The guy who's filming it has been filmed, like, his entire life. And so you get to see basically his entire life on film, or at least, like, clips of, like, his childhood and stuff. And basically, he is a Palestinian in the southern West Bank, and his hometown is being made into a base for, like, tank training for the IDF. And a big part of the movie is about his relationship with a Israeli journalist who is trying to better understand his situation and is very empathetic to him. That was one of the strongest aspects of the movie to me. This was great. I don't like some of the music mixing in the movie, but otherwise it was pretty fantastic, and yeah, go see it. Next, we have Look Back. This is a short, less than an hour, I think, anime film, which really worked for me. First off, the animation is incredible. It is so good. It is so breathtaking during so many points of this movie. It is the best 2D animation I've seen in years. It's got this really great, morbid sense of humor, especially in the start, and combines different styles of animation in really great ways, really creative ways that fit with the story. It's a movie that analyzes, like, what motivates artists. It's about these 2 competing school comic book panel artists, and about halfway through, it becomes something very, very different. More of like an abstract take on, I guess I can't spoil the movie, but a certain struggle, and it was super unique. It's so short, you have no reason not to watch this. Again, amazing animation. Next, we have Furiosa, a Mad Max story. This is a prequel to Mad Max Fury Road, and how the fuck do you do a prequel to Mad Max Fury Road? Because making anything to try to follow up that movie, I imagine, is incredibly hard, because that movie is the greatest action movie, especially while using cars. There's no way to top it, so you have to do something different, but you also want to give the fans what they want. I imagine this was so hard to balance, but I think they really, really pulled it off. I think I like the aspects of this movie that are different the most. It's much more character-based than any of the Mad Max movies. I liked how long they spent before Furiosa grows up into Anya Taylor-Joy. So much of the movie took place before that. The music is incredible. Again, just like Mad Max Fury Road, there are some great action sequences in this movie. I loved Chris Hemsworth in this movie. It had a weird, cool ending. Yeah, I really, really love this. Not as much as Mad Max Fury Road, for sure, but it's really, really cool, and I think I will be often watching them together. Next, we have Last Stop in Yuma County. This felt very inspired by Tarantino and a little bit of the Coen brothers as well. They actually have an actor from No Country for Old Men in this movie, but more Tarantino. If you like Tarantino, you'll probably really, really like this movie. In some ways, it's more mature than a Tarantino movie. But anyways, it's a very engaging crime thriller, like, slash mystery, I guess. And not only is it an incredibly tight script, but it's also a very smart take on the genre. The rise of tension was fantastic. Something happens about an hour, which kind of leaves you going, okay, where do we go from here now? Like, where could this story go? We have 30 minutes left. What do you do? This feels like the ending of the movie. And while the last 30 minutes of the movie aren't quite as strong as the first hour, they were still really good. This movie also knows exactly what to show and what not to show. So again, if you like this sort of thing, you will love this movie. If you like action, crime, thriller, you will love Last Stop in Yuma County. Go see it. Next, we have The Girl with the Needle. This is my favorite of the international features for this year's Oscars. It is very disturbing, so don't watch this movie if you don't like disturbing concepts, because, yeah, this movie is very hard to watch at some points. It is kind of about, I mean, it's about the state of abortion in, I think, Poland or Denmark or something, right after World War I. And you probably are figuring out the tie to the title and are incredibly disturbed. So, yeah, don't watch this if this sounds like too much for you. For me, though, this very tragic story was incredibly heart-wrenching and engaging for me. It's very quickly paced. I kind of thought from, like, the black and white poster that this would be a really slow movie. It's also, like, less than $500,000 budget, so I thought this would be, like, a really slow, maybe even boring movie. But no, this movie has a really snappy pace, so I was always engaged. And yeah, it is really fucking sad though, and the fact that the movie ends with, like, based on true events or something, that did not put me in a good mood after. But also, this movie has some of my favorite cinematography of the year. It's incredibly well framed at every single moment. Great soundtrack, great acting. Some of the makeup, there's a guy with, like, a facial deformity in the movie, and it didn't really look that good to me. But again, really, really low budget. Still the best of the international features, in my opinion. We finally made it to the top 10, and we're going to start it off with my favorite documentary feature nomination for an Oscar this year, Black Box Diaries. A lot of the documentaries this year have been about, like, wars and conflicts involving many, many people, and you would think those would be the hardest to watch, but in a way, this was actually the most heart-wrenching for me. It's a movie about a rape victim in Japan, and it's a criticism of their judicial system and how lenient they are on sexual violence in terms of their legislation. And it works as that very specific story of this personal experience and as this criticism of this specific government, but it also is kind of about anyone's struggle with these things, and the struggle that so many governments have around the world with these issues. So yeah, it's a very powerful movie. It's so hard to watch at certain points though. It's made entirely by the victim, and she also wrote a book about her experience. And the way the story unfolds is consistently engaging. It feels like a story. It's not just like a documentation of facts. It is, you're watching this case unravel over the course of almost 8 years. It's also really sad how the police and investigators and the people working in the judicial system are reacting to her trauma, to the situation. But there's also some very, very emotional moments because they're heartwarming. And there's some moments in this movie that are really, really beautiful and sweet. And God, what a documentary. It was so engaging throughout the entire thing. And again, hard to watch. Wouldn't recommend this to everybody. But if this sounds like something you can handle, please watch this movie. Next we have Rap World. This is not going this high on most people's lists. Very different tone than the last movie. This is one of the funniest movies I've ever seen. It's also free on YouTube. It's less than an hour long. It is so funny. And I think it will be consistently rewatchable because it's not like jokes that are funny. It is just the way the characters talk and act is so hilarious to watch. And I just couldn't stop laughing the entire time. Watch this with a group, please. It's such a great experience. There are so many good quotes in this movie. The movie is about a group of 3 white boys in Pennsylvania who are like, we are going to record an entire rap album in one night. And they don't have any idea what they're doing. And literally the entire movie is basically them procrastinating doing it. And they're like, we're going to make a documentary about us making this rap album. And most of the movie is just them like driving around their town. And it's so funny. I love this movie. I love Connor O'Malley. Please watch this. It's hilarious. Next we have Challengers. I really loved so much about this movie. Again, this is the other movie by Luca Guadagnino. It has an amazing soundtrack by Trent Reznor and Atticus Ross. Great performances from everybody. But the main thing that really immediately grabbed me about this movie and what I was really enjoying about it so much was the amazing use of the camera specifically. And the way it moves around the environments, the way it's edited, it all has this great intensity. It's basically about a threesome and tennis. And, yeah, very weird movie, very weird concept for a movie. But the way they structured it was really engaging. I love the way that they jumped to the past and had you slowly kind of learn about these characters and their relationship. My one criticism of the movie is that once you do learn about the characters, they become, to me, so unlikable that I kind of stopped being interested in them. They became kind of boring to me because I just hated them so much. Those last, 15 minutes of the movie, I was kind of a little bit annoyed because I was so just I don't even care about what's happening anymore because I just hate these characters. And I really wanted that Whiplash ending, that amazing I guess I can't spoil Whiplash, but the performance at the end of the movie is so invigorating and exciting, and you do root for characters. And this movie, I guess spoilers, but it should be obvious. It ends with a tennis match between the two guys, and I just did not give a shit who won because I did not like the characters so much. And I don't think this is a mistake. You're not meant to like them. You kind of like one of them more than the other, but it just was not enough for me to really care that much what was happening at the end. This might sound like a bigger criticism than it actually is. I still really enjoyed a lot of aspects of the ending of the movie. I just, in terms of the story, the one criticism I have of the entire movie, there's so much about it I love, so many moments I love, I was not engaged in the story or the characters for that last 15 minutes. I think they're just a little too over the top in terms of how unlikable they are. They feel almost inhuman to me by that point of the movie. Next we have Baby Reindeer. I'm torn between giving this a 4-star or a 4.5 stars, but I'll give this a 4.5 stars. This is the start of the 4.5 stars. This was great, and it's a mini-series, but it's on Letterboxd, so I'm putting it on the list, and I just really liked the tone of this. It felt a lot like Trainspotting to me, and not just because they're Scottish and there's drug use in the show, but it also just had this great fast-paced tone, great switching between times, great soundtrack choices. That's the aspect of it I really liked. I like the combining of different genres, I guess. It felt very Trainspotting to me, which is one of my favorite movies. So, yeah, I really enjoyed the the vibe of this. I thought it was really consistently engaging. I always wanted to watch the next episode. I love that it's 7 episodes and they're not consistent in length. I feel like we should be giving as much freedom to creators as possible and not being like, okay, you're making 10 episodes and they're each going to be an hour long. No, this is paced exactly how the creators of it wanted it to be paced, how they thought it should be paced, and I think the show really benefits from that. I really like the characters. There's some very emotional points of the show for me. A lot of people are saying that the trans character, I forget her name in the show or the actor's name, a lot of people felt like she was a lot weaker of a performance than the other two, but for me, I really did not feel that way. There was a couple moments that were a little weird in her performance, but I felt like all 3 of them were very, very, very strong actors. And yeah, I really don't have much at all to criticize about this. I really like the ending. I pretty much really, really enjoyed every single aspect of this. Next, we have my favorite documentary of the year, SPERMWORLD. I'm very sad that this didn't get a nomination for Best Documentary Feature. This movie is amazing. It is also by Lance Oppenheim, the director of the miniseries I just talked about, Ren Faire. And he is maybe the best documentary filmmaker working today. This movie does not feel like a documentary in many ways. It feels like a narrative. It feels like 3 narratives that are happening at once. There's like 3 different sets of underground sperm donors that you're following. And it was so engaging to see their lives develop. It's so rare that a documentary doesn't just feel like an assembly of like different moments that they got on camera or like different facts about a certain concept. But this movie is that rare thing where it is a story you are following and consistently engaged because it's developing and there's these turns in the story and you really care about the characters because they're real. And some of them are incredibly empathetic and likable. And God, the ability to get 3 stories like this is just incredible. It's also just hilarious. It's a great concept to make a documentary about. Yeah, this was awesome. Please watch this documentary. It's so well filmed too. I love the look of the movie. I rewatched it like a month after seeing it for the first time, which I almost never do with a documentary feature, but this one is so good that I did that. So please watch this movie. At number 5, we have Memoir of a Snail. I've already made a video on this if you want to hear me talk about it in more detail, but right off the bat, this movie took its creator like more than 10 years to animate. I'm not sure how much of that time we spent just funding the movie rather than actually creating it and animating it, but that alone should show you how detailed this animation is and how important this story was to tell by its creator. I want to say the animation is gorgeous, but that feels like the wrong word because so much of it is intentionally sort of ugly. The animation is mesmerizing. It's intricate. It's fantastic. I don't know. Those are my adjectives. It's one of the best stop motion movies I've ever seen from a visual perspective, and you should go see this movie on that alone. But it also has simultaneously one of the best written stories of the year. This movie never felt predictable. It is very sad at moments, but it never felt hopeless. And you didn't know where it was going, but you just have this hope of, like, I really hope these characters end up doing well by the end of this movie, because I don't know if I can take more of the sad stuff. And it just balanced the joy of certain moments and the sadness of certain moments so well to make it not too hopeless, but right on the border. It definitely has some dark moments that might be a little too much for some people, but God, that ending was so good. Any other year, this probably would have been my favorite of the year, but there just happened to be 4 movies that were even better. Next, we have Anora. The first act of this movie very much felt like a Sean Baker film. It works as a great character study. It works as this great portrayal of sex work. It's very funny, especially in terms of the acting and some of the dialogue. It's great. It's everything you would expect from Sean Baker, but I would say a little elevated. But then the second act is one of the funniest things I have ever seen. Every single actor is so good in this movie. every single, even like background character is so well casted and performs their performance with so much realism. I feel like this director, Sean Baker, must have just spent time with every single person on screen because it all felt so real in a lot of ways. But again, that second act is like almost a farce. It's so over the top and silly, and I loved it. I loved it so much. It is one of the best films of the year. Obviously, it's number 4 on my list, but it is so consistently engaging. Unless you are just can't handle a movie about sex work for some reason, go see this movie. I've seen it 3 times, once with my parents, and I have thoroughly enjoyed watching it every single time. It's such an easy movie to watch for me. It's so solid on every single level. One of the best edited movies of the year, some of the best color grading and cinematography. Again, the performances are mind-blowingly good. The third act is unexpected and dramatic in a really thought-provoking way. It's gonna go down as one of the best movies of the decade, easily. I love this movie, so go see it. At number 3, the first 5 out of 5 star movie on this list is Hundreds of Beavers. I've already made a video about this movie, but all I gotta say is, when it first started, I was barely laughing. The visuals were bad. It felt like a YouTube short that shouldn't have been a feature-length movie. I barely cracked a smile, and by the end, I was laughing so hard I could not breathe. It's one of the funniest movies I've ever seen. It's like a Charlie Chaplin silent comedy, or like a Looney Tunes movie, but with live action. It's so good. It's so good. If this looks like your kind of thing, go check it out. Go watch my video for a more in-depth recommendation. Every time I think about this movie, I'm like, God, that's one of the best movies ever. There's nothing like it. It's so good. It's so funny. It's so well made on every level. It also has a tiny, tiny budget, but they did so much with it, and everybody is loving this movie. You will love this movie. Go check it out. Everything about it is so intricately crafted in terms of special effects and editing, and superimposing a bunch of images and footage on top of each other. So impressive how they were able to do that. Really impressive filmmaking, again, with that tiny, tiny budget. But I'm not giving it a high score just because it has a small budget. It's an incredible, always entertaining movie. And rewatching it, I do actually like that first scene. Now, this was my favorite movie for a very, very long time during this year. And if you told me anything would have topped it, let alone 2 movies, I would have thought you were crazy. But somehow there are 2 movies that I thought were better this year. Before I say what my number 2 pick of the year is, I want to say that it's basically tied for number 1. I pretty much like these movies equally. They're both high 10s for me, and they're both competing for my favorite film of the decade so far. These are 2 of the best movies I've ever seen. But I'm feeling number 2, I'm going to say, is The Substance. This was also my number 1 pick for a very, very long time. And if you told me that it would go down to number 2, I would have told you were crazy, because this is the best movie ever. The first time I saw this movie in a theater, I had maybe the greatest experience in a theater of my life. I had such a good time watching this movie, especially that first time. If you get the chance to see this in a theater, please do, because I've seen it 3 times now. One time on a TV with like TV speakers. The sound design is so important for this movie, and you need a good like audio setup. If you get to see it in a theater, please see it in a theater. This movie just gave me such a visceral reaction. Let me talk about movies in general for a second. I think the goal of a movie is to kind of play an audience's emotions like an instrument. Like, you want to make the audience laugh when they're supposed to. You want to make the audience scared when they're supposed to, or cry, or disturbed, or whatever. You're trying to create an emotional experience for the viewer. And for me, every single attempt at making me experience an emotion was successful on this movie's part. And that's why it's a 10 out of 10 movie. And it really made me feel those intended emotions. Every detail in this movie is also really well thought out. Like, every single part of this movie, every aspect of production design, and every line of dialogue felt like it was contributing to the themes and the ideas that they were trying to get across so well. I guess I'm a body horror fan, because my favorite movie of 2021 was a body horror movie. For some reason, I think it's a very effective genre for me. I also think it works well for a lot of different commentary. It's also just really fucking cool when it's done practically. The first time I saw this movie, I wasn't scared by what was on screen, but it did kind of build up fear in me because I was scared what they were going to show. It built up that anticipation, which did kind of make me scared. Body horror just disturbs me in a way that other horror doesn't. And the other genre that disturbs me even more than body horror is movies about addiction. There's something about addiction that really gets to me, and this movie combines the two. The way they portray addiction, it's very similar to like Requiem for a Dream, and that way of portraying addiction just gets to me like nothing else for some reason. That idea of permanent self-harm that comes because you're trying to get that like dopamine hit and you're going to destroy your own body is something that I feel like we could all kind of relate to in a way. And I think that's why it's so disturbing for me, because like a monster in a horror movie, I can just think, okay, that's not real. Like that will never affect me in my life. Whereas this is like a real life horror that we all experience. A lot of people seem to criticize this movie for being unsubtle or over the top, but that is what I loved about it. That in-your-face attitude is this movie's personality. It doesn't want to be unclear what it's about. It doesn't want to mince words or be interpreted in any way. It wants to get in your face and tell you how sleazy the entertainment industry is. It wants to show you how women are commodified. It, most of all though, wants to show you how fucked up these societal standards are and the suffering that comes from that. This is obviously a very feminist movie, and maybe you'd think that it would alienate me in some ways, but I was just so with it and really felt every aspect it was trying to make me feel, as I said. So yeah, was my favorite movie of the year, still kind of is. As I said, it's tied, but let's talk about number one. So again, I will say this one more time, before I reveal my number one pick, the substance in this are tied for number one of the year, and they're both competing for my favorite film of the decade. But for right now, my favorite film of 2024 and the 2020s so far is The Brutalist. With The Substance, I walked out of the theater going, oh my god, that is one of the best movies I've ever seen. It was my favorite film of the year for months and months and months, but with The Brutalist, I did not love it at first. Perhaps it was my mindset at the time. I knew it was a great movie. I also thought, especially during the first half, like, I was trying to figure out, was this based on a real person, or maybe partially one of the filmmaker's parents or grandparents and their experience? But no, the filmmaker's, the director isn't Hungarian or Jewish, the editor is, but this movie is not based on a real person at all. It's just so well crafted in every way. It just feels so authentic to a real life experience that, especially during that first half where it's more realistic, that I really thought, like, man, is this based on a real person? But anyways, that first time I watched it, I felt unsure about how I felt about a lot of things, especially the ending, but there was a lot I appreciated about how real it felt and the authenticity, and I just wanted to unpack how I felt about what this movie was going for. And as time went on, over the past 5 weeks, that's since the first time I saw the movie, I've just been wanting more and more to see it again. I've been thinking about it more and more, and I finally got to watch the movie again yesterday. And God, it is so good. And it's crazy that I'd want to go see a 3.5 hour long movie after just a little more than a month. But I had to see this movie again. I had to fully analyze how I felt about it, and I just had the best experience ever. I adored every element of this movie. It felt like 2 hours. It is so good. I picked up so much more this time. Adrien Brody genuinely gives the best performance of the year. Nothing comes even close. He never felt like he was acting. Every time he like cries in the movie or breaks down emotionally, it just felt real. Also, every time something like that happens, it's so well earned by the movie. It never felt disingenuous. It always really felt real, as I've said, and because of that, you're so involved with the emotions of the characters. The original score is the best of the year too. The cinematography is some of my favorite of the year. There's some images in this movie that are so great. That Statue of Liberty that's on its head is such an iconic image already because it's so great at kind of describing the entire point of the movie. It would be an incredible movie if it were $40 million, or any budget. I mean, I don't really care about the budget when describing the quality of a movie or how it felt to me. But I gotta say, it's very, very impressive that this was under $10 million to make. It's one of the most mind-blowing budgets ever. I don't know how they did it. I love the intermission. Every movie in theaters that's more than 3 hours long should have an intermission. But I also just love this one in particular because the image that they use during that 15-minute intermission is meaningful to the plot. It's both symbolic and also describes an event that happens between the first and second act of the movie, which was so clever. And again, that image is just like, it's like beautiful in how it relates to the characters, and it's symbolic for multiple reasons. It's just a movie that's so layered and deals with so many various themes in really complex and thought-provoking ways. A lot of people have been taking away, I feel, a very simplistic message from this movie, like artist good, investor bad. And I think that is such a surface-level take. Some of the responses I've seen to this film are just mind-boggling. Never go on TikTok for movie reviews. That is where brains go to die. Look at this. This is ridiculous. Also, this movie got into a controversy for its use of AI, which I think is ridiculous. Do your research. No human element was replaced by AI. It was used as a tool to help with really tedious aspects. I don't think it would have improved anyone's pay. I just don't see how you could be mad about this in any way. I understand why people don't want AI in their movies, but this movie is not the problem. It is not an AI script or anything. If you're going to boycott this movie because of its use of AI, then you should never listen to a song with pitch correction or autotune, because that's essentially what they did. They used AI to help with Adrian Brody pronouncing Hungarian so it would sound more real to a Hungarian viewer, which I think is a great use of the tool, because it lets people who are Hungarian be more immersed in the movie. I don't know why we would be complaining about this, because it's not replacing a human element, which is my problem with AI anyways. Also, I think there was like one aspect of production design that was kind of inspired by like an AI image or something. Who cares? This is not something that should be controversial at all, I feel. If AI is kept to this level in its involvement in films, that is the best case scenario possible. And I promise you, it is not going to be used to this level. It is going to be used in much more malicious, unethical, and uncreative avenues. So we should not be criticizing this. We should embracing this level of the usage of AI. Before I finish talking about this movie, I want to talk about the themes of the film and how I felt about them, what they meant to me. So I guess this is kind of minor spoilers, but I'm basically just going to be vaguely talking about what this movie meant to me, not really plot elements. So if you're fine with that, you can continue watching. But if you don't want to know anything about this movie, then skip ahead. The first half of this movie is all about idealism of the American dream to me. It takes a Holocaust survivor who moves to the US without his wife and his family, who are also part of the Holocaust. And he, without them, is just struggling immensely. He is struggling with extreme financial insecurity and drug addiction, but he has this dream by the end of the first act. And he believes with the wealth of America, or with the wealth of this like rich businessman in America, he will be able to accomplish and pursue his dream and create this building in Pennsylvania. And the feeling I got from that first half is like, okay, this guy is struggling and suffering so immensely from the physical pain and the trauma through his life experiences, but this is distracting this. He can kind of overcome the struggles of his immigration through his artistic talent. He'll be respected by other Americans and embraced by them. That's the hope, that's the dream, that's how it feels like it's going. And then the second act, it completely turns and becomes about the reality of the situation. That sure, the Americans respect that he's talented and that he's a talented artist, but they don't like him because of that. They don't like anything about him. They make fun of his accent. They don't like that he's part of their country. They just want to exploit him once they realize he's talented. They just want to use him and take control of him. And that's what the movie's about. It's about how people will take control over your art, especially if they're any sort of part of it. If they're a patron, they control you. It's about how people will use your art to fit religious or political agendas and misinterpret it and take it to become something of their own. And of course, it's also about all the struggles of his experiences. But my main takeaway from this movie, the tragedy of this story, is that while we may view art and artistic expression as a very powerful and healing thing, it's not going to make you overcome your struggles. And especially struggles like this. It's not going to heal those wounds. And in many cases, it actually may make things worse. It is a powerful thing. It can help distract you and make you feel better. But at the end of the day, it is not the thing that is going to solve this trauma that the character is experiencing. And yeah, it is just an incredible movie. So I hope you've enjoyed these unscripted rambles about all my favorite movies of the year, all the movies I would recommend. We are going to go into the 3 out of 5s and work our way down to the worst movie of the year, number 100. But before we do, I just want to say, a 3 out of 5 is not a bad score. It means I thought the movie was good. So if any of these 3 out of 5s look interesting to you, go see them. I kind of recommend them. They are good movies. All right, let's do this rapid pace. Every movie that's a 3 out of 5 or below. We're going to start with It Just Takes Time by Joel Haver at number 37. This movie is incredibly well shot and also well performed for what it is. It's, again, it was just made in a month, like all of the Joel Haver movies, and it's kind of has this really interesting subtext that kind of develops throughout the film, and you kind of realize what the movie is about as it goes. It takes a little too much time, in my opinion, and there's a lot of sequences that aren't really that engaging to me, but there's a lot I really did love about this movie. I'm gonna give it a 3 out of 5 overall, but it was close to a 3.5. At number 38, we have Civil War. I think people thought this was going to have a more, like, defined dystopian America, that it would have something to say about the division of our politics in the United States. And while that's there a little bit, it's all kind of not very much explained. Like, you can kind of pick up things from lines of dialogue, but the point is not really to think about the division and to think about taking a side between either sides of the United States in this movie. Like, the powerful group in the movie is a combination of California and Texas, which is kind of made to make you think, okay, this is not real life. This is not about our current politics. The point of the movie is just kind of that the division is a bad thing, and it doesn't want you to kind of see connections to real life as much as possible. But this movie is more about, like, media and media perverts, I guess I would call it. It's about people being probably way too involved in the conflict to get photography and write stories about what's going on in this conflict. And I thought that was an interesting take. That was an interesting way to center the themes of this movie. There's a lot of really great sequences. I love the ending action scene. It's I won't spoil it, but I thought it was really great. The thing I didn't really love about this movie, and the reason it's not higher on this list than this, is because I just did not love the characters very much. I thought they were very bland. And when bad things started happening to them, I realized I didn't really care. And that kind of took me out of the movie by the end. Next, we have another Joel Haver movie, Coming Home. This is a movie about him visiting his mom, who has recently moved to Nova Scotia. It's really sweet. The cinematography of that, like, snowy landscape is super pretty. There's a lot of great conversations between him and his mom where she's kind of remembering her childhood there, and she's finally moved back. She's talking about her parents. It's just so nice. It's such a nice movie. The reason I'm not giving it more than a 3 out of 5 is just because it's not like a story. It's kind of just like you hanging out with Joel and his mom, which is super fun and sweet. But I don't know if I could really recommend this to most people because, you know, if you don't know these people, if you're not a fan of this YouTuber, I don't know how meaningful this would be. I'm sure you could get something out of it still. I thought it was very good. I thought it was really cute for what it was. I don't know if a lot of people would get the same experience that I did, though, because it's essentially just an hour of a guy talking to his mom. So I don't know. Next, we have Didi. This is like a coming-of-age story that takes place in the early 2000s. I thought it portrayed that really well. There are surprisingly a lot of very funny parts of this movie, but also a lot of very, like, cliche parts. There's a lot of parts where it tries to get absurd and dreamlike that I didn't really like. Yeah, I felt a little mixed on this one, but overall, it was good. Felt a lot like 8th Grade by Bo Burnham. Reminded me a lot about that. I don't know which one I like better. I think that one is directed better. I think this one is funnier. Next, we have A Real Pain. This stars and is directed by Jesse Eisenberg and also stars Kieran Culkin. I thought Kieran Culkin gave a really good performance. I thought Jesse Eisenberg was good. It's not really the type of character I like to see performed by him. But in terms of direction, it's solid. It's accomplishes what it's trying to do. It's pretty to look at in terms of cinematography, the music, the use of like classical music is good. I just didn't like every choice in terms of the writing, and for the most part, it's very like standard. It's good, but it's kind of basic. The story is pretty standard, and I think the type of thing we've seen before, but I still liked it overall. There are definitely some funny lines of dialogue that I remember. Next, we have Sugarcane. This is my least favorite of the nominees for documentary feature. I still really liked it, though. It's a very interesting subject, and I think it's the best shot of all of them. It has really beautiful cinematography, but I don't really felt like they were able to maintain this movie in terms of keeping it engaging, because a lot of it feels like interview footage, and I really don't know if it was all necessary. I'm trying to say this because we're dancing on a very delicate subject. It's a very dark subject matter. It's about Native Americans in Canada who are in like horribly abusive schools, like Catholic schools. But I don't know. I really just felt like I should be loving this movie, and I just was not that engaged for a lot of it. Next, we have a movie called It's What's Inside. This is on Netflix. It's kind of like a horror comedy about body swapping. I thought it was cool. I liked the lighting. Apparently it was edited by the director. I just thought it was kind of overly confusing, and maybe if I rewatched it, I would like it more. Next, we have one that I'm going to have to talk about for a bit. We have Emilia Pérez. This, I saw this in November. I liked it. I was lukewarm on it. I didn't love it. Again, I'm not recommending it. But there was a lot I appreciated about the filmmaking, and then it became the most controversial movie of the year. I really can't comment on the cultural inaccuracies to the film or the apparently offensively bad Spanish, because I don't speak Spanish. I've only been to Mexico for about a week of my life. I don't really know much about Mexican culture. I really did not have that experience because I am ignorant to these things. And if you despise this movie and think it's the worst thing ever, that's totally fine with me. I mean, again, my reason for liking it is probably partially from my ignorance. But this was my experience. I kind of enjoyed it, and I'll go into depth in a second about what I enjoyed about it. And if you are mad that I gave this a good score, calm down. It's just my experience. I really liked the balance of tone in the movie. I thought it balanced different tones really, really well. People really don't like the cinematography. I liked it. I thought it had really cool, energetic uses of camera movement, and I liked a lot of the weird color palette of the movie. People really hate the music, and for a myriad of reasons, I kind of liked it. I don't feel like this is trying to be a Broadway musical. I feel like it's trying to be somewhere in between a musical and a drama. And so I was okay with some of like the talk singing or whisper singing. I felt like it fit the scenes better that way. Even if it's not as, catchy musically or singable musically, I felt like it fit the movie better. There's also people who are making fun of the penis and vagina song, which is very strange to me because I felt like that was clearly intentionally funny. And I don't know how people are missing that. It's a very funny moment in the movie for me. I don't know how people are like, how did this win over Wicked? It's like, no, this is obviously meant to be campy. I said in my Oscar predictions video that I would be happy if Carla Sofia Gascon was to win. After recent controversies, I do not feel that way anymore, obviously. But, when watching the movie for the first time, I thought she gave a good performance. I thought Zoe Saldana did a very good performance. I wasn't crazy about Selena Gomez, but I think the hate she's getting is kind of over the top. I still think it would be very funny if this won every Oscar, because I would be very interested in what the reaction would be. But is this a great movie? Does it deserve all those nominations? No, it's got a lot of problems. But overall, I enjoyed it, and I hope you guys can appreciate that I am saying my real opinion instead of, siding with the masses on this one, because you will now know that Michael Mann 2000 always says his real opinion. He is not an opinion faker. So, I hope you guys can appreciate that. Next, we have Piece by Piece. I talked about this in another video. It's the Pharrell Williams biopic. It's not really an interesting biopic or story, but the Lego angle was cool. Again, if you want to hear me talk more about that, you can in another video. Then we have Thelma. This is a, like, comedy, like, spy movie parody with an actor who's a 94-year-old woman, which was very entertaining to me in a lot of ways. A lot of good performances and good casting in this movie, but I don't think it's really that great. I mean, it's pretty standard in most technical aspects. It was cute, I liked it, it was funny at a lot of points, but it's also just kind of a very, very basic story in a lot of ways. Next, we have another Joel Haver movie. It's called The Hero's Journey, aka My Life, aka The Caleb Johnson Story, parentheses, I'm Caleb. I really enjoyed this one, especially because of the performances. I feel like it's Joel's best performance in any of his movies. I think there's performances of characters with mental handicaps in this movie, and I thought they were very respectful and well done. Yeah, I think this is the best one in terms of the performances, in terms of the story. It's not as strong as some of the others, but I really enjoyed it. Next, we have The Text. This one stars Dax Flame, and I love Dax Flame. Again, it's one of the Joel Haver movies. It's only like 45 minutes, I think. And, yeah, I think this is kind of the opposite, where I don't know if the performances are as good, but I think this one had one of the most engaging stories out of all of his films this year. And Dax Flame is always hilarious in everything. Next, we have Sing Sing. This is a movie about prisoners who are part of a program where they get to be part of a play, and, I thought it was really cute. There's some good performances in the movie, especially the main guy who I forget the name of. I'll put it on screen right now. But overall, it was pretty basic in a lot of ways. Watching this right after Nickel Boys was also a horrible idea because I was constantly comparing them, and I think I like this movie a lot less because of that. But, you know, it's a little too long as well, but it was cute. Next, we have a movie called Good One. I don't feel like many people have seen this movie. It's about a girl who's about to go into college, and she is going on like a camping trip with her dad and her dad's friend. Both of them are recently divorced or going through a divorce or something. The performances are very realistic. The whole movie is very realistic. I feel like the casting was really great. However, nothing really happens in this movie. There is one line of dialogue that is really uncomfortable and is kind of the main event of this movie. And in a way, I respect making that one line of dialogue so impactful, because that was kind of the point of the movie, is that people don't treat things like that as impactful as they should be, but this probably would have worked better as like a short film or something, I don't know. Next, we have Babygirl. This stars Nicole Kidman and the guy from Triangle of Sadness, who I can't remember the name of, but anyways, it's a movie about her cheating on her husband and kind of doing this very dumb thing, considering she has like a good family in the movie. She's this powerful businesswoman, and she has this relationship with this young guy who is part of her company, and I like it. I think the performances are very good. I think the directing is very good. I liked a lot of like the musical choices, although it kind of got old. I just don't feel like the commentary on this subject is that thought-provoking or interesting or strong. The writing isn't really that great, but if this looks like something that you might enjoy, it's by the same director as Body Bodies Bodies. Next, we have Love Lies Bleeding. I think people are liking this more than I did. It's about a lesbian couple, and there's a lot of like violence, and there's like steroid use and bodybuilding. It's kind of got a bit of a messy plot, and I think in terms of balancing different tones and like things that are supposed to be dramatic with things that are supposed to be absurd, it didn't really do that great of a job for me. I also just don't find the characters very interesting at all. But there's also a lot I did like about this movie in terms of the presentation, music, cinematography, that kind of stuff. It's got a vibe I like, I just wasn't really that with it. Next, we have Drive Away Dolls. This is Ethan Coen's film. Joel Coen made that movie I talked about in my 2021 video, The Tragedy of Macbeth, and now Ethan Coen has made a lesbian comedy called Drive Away Dolls, and it's pretty good. There's definitely some funny moments. I think they work better together, and this kind of felt very underwhelming. It's pretty weird at some points. I really like Margaret Qualley's performance, But I don't know. Again, it's just underwhelming. It's not as strong as a Coen Brothers movie, and I'm trying to decide what it is about it. I think it's got the funny aspects, but it doesn't have that great of a story at all. And by the end, like the moment the movie ends, I just was like, okay, I guess it's over now. Like, it didn't really have an impactful ending at all. Yeah, not a thought-provoking movie like a lot of Coen Brothers movies are. Next we have Orion in the Dark. I want to make a video on this because there's a Charlie Kaufman script of this movie that I think is much better than the product we got, but I guess it is a Charlie Kaufman written kids movie. I have given a 5 out of 5 to pretty much every movie he's been involved with, except for this one. It was kind of standard to me, and that was a bummer. But I think it was forced to be standard because, boy, his original script is so good, and I will make a video about it. It's hilarious. But yeah, I'll make like a comparison video sometime soon. Next, we have another Joel Haver movie, Diarrhea Brothers Save the Day. This was very funny. It was the first one I watched, actually, and yeah, it's got some very funny moments. I don't know if it maintains the length or the story, but it was kind of an experiment to be as ridiculous as possible, and I think they accomplished that, and it was very entertaining. Just a goddamn diarrhea movie. Next, we have his stop-motion movie, which is over 2 hours long, nearly 2.5 hours long. This was really impressive, and it was good. It maintained that length pretty well. It has this vibe of like kids playing with their toys throughout the entire movie. It gets ridiculous at the end. I like how the story built up. Is it too long? Maybe? I don't know. I didn't love it, but I don't even know if the length was the issue. I don't really know what the issue was. I think it was just a good movie, and that's kind of all there is to it. But yeah, very impressive. And again, made in a month. How the fuck did he do this? Next, we have Lisa Frankenstein. It's been over a year since I've seen this, so I don't know how good my commentary is going to be. I didn't really like the way it was shot. It was mildly funny. I liked it overall. There are some really fun moments, especially near the end, but I don't know. It's not a movie I've really thought about since I've seen it. Next, we have Girl State. This is a documentary about girls who are creating their own kind of government. It's done in every state of the United States, apparently. And I guess this is like the first one where it's been co-ed, or where boys and the girl states are kind of like in the same facility or something. It was good. I think the concept is the best part about it, like these funny moments of these little girls talking about politics. But I don't know if the presentation is that strong. Like, I don't like the music. I don't like the way it's shot. I don't like the way the movie looks. I don't hate any of these aspects. I just kind of felt like it didn't feel very cinematic to me. And I think the movie suffers from that. But again, there's some definite funny moments between these girls. Next is a movie called How to Make Millions Before Grandma Dies. I watched this solely because it was one of the highest rated movies on Letterboxd. I think it's very big in Asian countries, not really over here. And I was really hoping this would be like an over-the-top comedy. It has a great title, but it more went for a very standard, sappy story about learning to be respectful to your grandparents and the elderly. And it was fine, it was cute, but not a great movie. I like the way it's shot, though. Very, very green color palette. And this movie also has some of the worst subtitles I have ever come across. I'm trying to remember, like, funny moments. Every time they talk about kids, they called them their offspring. So it's like, oh, she's with her offspring today. Very funny. Watch it on Amazon Prime for those subtitles. Next, we have A Complete Unknown. I really wasn't digging Timothée Chalamet's performance at the beginning. It felt way too much like a not even that great impression of Bob Dylan. But I think by the end, he kind of warmed up to it and started to fill the role pretty well. I assume this was probably filmed in order. It's very cheesy. It's a very movie. And for me, if you're trying to portray the real story, it doesn't really work for me because of, you could just feel those movie cliches. The movie is almost like 80 or 90% music. There's so many Bob Dylan covers, and those elements were fun. I enjoyed hearing that. But at the same time, I kind of struggle to understand what the point of watching this movie is, because if I want to listen to Bob Dylan, I can listen to Bob Dylan. If I want to learn about Bob Dylan, I can watch a Dylan Scorsese documentary. Those are great. If I want to see a great movie about folk singers in the 60s. I can watch Inside Llewyn Davis. I really don't know what I was supposed to get out of this movie. I didn't have a bad time with this movie. I did enjoy it. I just don't really know what the point is, and I'm not sure I could recommend it because of that. Next we have Maria. I watch all of Pablo Larraín's movies. I always will, because I think he's a great director, even if his movies are often very boring. It reminded me a lot of Maestro, but it was good. Great cinematography. The performances are decent. I like the use of classical music, and there's some Brian Eno music at the end. It's not that engaging. I don't like the angle where they only took like a very short section of the end of her life, but it was still good. I like his last movie, Spencer, a lot better though. Next we have Conclave. I grew up Catholic, so I think that made this movie more interesting to me. It's okay. It was entertaining to me, and I think I was engaged by it mostly just because I grew up Catholic and I'm interested in the process of how a pope is decided. I hate the music. I think it was not only bad, but it totally undeservedly is insisting a tone that the movie just is not earning. But the performances are good. There's some pretty shots. The ending is kind of weird for me. It kind of left me going, okay, that's interesting. That's cool, I guess. But like, so what? Like, what happens now? What am I supposed to take away from that, really? Yeah, I don't know. I wasn't crazy about this movie. Next, we have Strange Darling. I've talked about this movie before. I was loving it during the middle. I was intrigued at the beginning, but the ending really fucked it up because there are two lines that, to me, implied that this movie may have been made by a sexist. Really strange way to end the movie, and I was very bummed, but yeah, if those two lines were cut out, I would give this a much higher score. I think it very cleverly uses chapters, like it splits the movie into 6 chapters and tells them out of order, and I think it was so well done in terms of that. I love the cinematography, I love the performances, but those two lines just ruined the movie for me. Next, we have a little movie about friendship by Joel Haver. I'm fans of him and his friend Trent Lenkarski, which this movie is basically just a conversation between the two of them, so it was good. I liked it, I guess, but I mean, it's literally just a conversation between two friends. Over the course of like a few days, like they just kind of cut bits and pieces of different conversations. It's cute, but I mean, like, I'm never gonna watch this again. Next, we have The Ninth Movie by Joel Haver. It has a great twist in the middle. I thought the ending was funny, and I thought the introduction to the concept was very intriguing at the very beginning. Basically, it's his 9th movie. He shows his 9th movie to his friends, and they're all like, it's not very good. And then he traps them in a cabin without any technology, and is like, okay, go make a better movie. And it's funny, but I don't know. It was too long. It really dragged at some points. I can't say I really liked it that much overall. Next, we have September 5th. There are some interesting moments about the event that I didn't know about. I really like the moment where they're talking about whether they should call the event terrorism. And if you don't know about it, I guess you can go watch this movie. But it just very much felt like reading a Wikipedia article. There's nothing about the presentation that's interesting or creative or that good. Next, we have Wicked. I have talked about this before on my channel. I do not like this movie, but I don't hate it. I'm very, like, in between. I think there's some impressive direction. I think there are some songs I like. But in general, I just do not have any investment in this story. It does not resonate with me in any way. I do not resonate with these characters in any way. And it's way too long. But there are still aspects I appreciate about the movie. Next, we have Mild Ass. It's a movie about a girl who meets an older version of herself and talks about her life. And it kind of persuades her to move through her life in a certain way. I thought it was okay. It was kind of boring for me at a lot of points. This should have been a short film. If you'd like to hear more, I've made a video about it. Next, we have Love Celeste. This is a movie, again, by Joel Haver. It's basically 3, like, prior boyfriends of a woman who died, and she sends them to Dubai with these, like, challenges for them to do, and I thought that concept was really fun and engaging, and then halfway through, it takes this, like, over-the-top, weird, mystical route that I did not like at all. And I didn't feel like fit with the movie at all. It felt very random, but otherwise, I really liked it. Next, we have Matt and Mara. I'm a big fan of Matt Johnston, which is why I wanted to watch this. He's good in the movie, but overall, the movie is very bland in terms of the way it's shot. in terms of the story. It's very slice of life. It's about relationships. I didn't really get anything out of it. Next, we have another movie by Joel Haver called Your Point Girl. This was made in YouTube Shorts, which is ridiculous. It was not really that interesting of a story to me. It was kind of silly and cliche, but kind of in a self-aware, over-the-top way. I liked the ending, but it's kind of meandering and didn't really have much focus, in my opinion. Next, we have Hiccups. I think this was my least favorite of the Joel Haver movies. It's his take on like a Woody Allen-styled rom-com, and I just did not find it very engaging at all. There's certain angles he takes with this concept that I thought were entertaining and interesting, but overall, I just was kind of bored for this one. It also has a lot of humor that just did not land for me. I didn't love the performances that much, but anyways. Next we have Alien Romulus. I feel like some Alien fans will really like this because in some ways it's very true to other Alien movies, but it also feels like a messy hodgepodge of all the Alien movies in a way that was kind of stupid and I didn't like it. There's one performance I really liked in the movie, but overall, yeah, this was kind of annoying in the way that it was just kind of referencing other Alien movies. Next, we have Blitz. This is by one of my favorite directors, Steve McQueen. This does not feel like a Steve McQueen movie, though. It's not really that well directed, actually. There's one scene with the flood that I thought was kind of cool. Saoirse Ronan is pretty good, but overall, this was really boring, and the child actor was not very good. Last of the 2.5s is Inside Out 2. I made a review of this already. I do not like this movie, and I talk in detail why, and yeah, Pixar's state right now is very worrying to me, and this movie was pretty lame and pointless. Why make a sequel to Inside Out? And it didn't make sense, the introduction of the new emotions. I hated that concept. There's things I thought were fine about it, but yeah, not a good movie. Next, we have Twisters. This is kind of like a sequel or soft reboot or something to the original Twister movie. I saw both of them, like, one after the other, and I like this one a lot less. I talked in a video about why, so you can go see that. It was a bad, predictable rom-com, basically, and I did not like it, and I thought it was very unengaging. And I didn't like any of the characters, really, either. There are some cool moments with the tornadoes, but yeah, I'm not a fan. Next is a movie some of you are going to get mad for me putting this low. I Saw the TV Glow. I know a lot of people love this movie. I know many people who it's one of their favorite movies ever. So you're probably annoyed that I'm putting it this low on the list, but I did not enjoy this movie. The biggest problem for me is the main actor, Justice Smith. He is one of the worst actors working today. I'm sorry. I really hate every performance I've seen from him. Yeah, not only is he a bad actor in my opinion, but he does not fit this role at all. He's directed to be like mumbling the whole movie, and it just constantly made me cringe, and I just really felt like it did not work. Aside from that, I just found the movie very meandering, and I felt like a lot of scenes just went on forever unnecessarily, or didn't really have that much of a point. There are some like monologues that just didn't have the impact I felt like they were supposed to for me. There are things I really like about it. I like the way it's shot. I like the color grading. I felt like I loved what it was getting at, what it was trying to do, but it just did not work for me personally. It was not that for me. If it's that for you, I'm so glad that you love this movie. I see greatness here. It just, the way it was constructed did not work for me. Also, really, really specific nitpick. There is a show in this movie called The Pink Opaque. And people have talked about this before, but I have to mention it as well. It is a very specific way that you have to enunciate that title. The Pink Opaque. It requires so much effort in your voice to enunciate The Pink Opaque. It sounds like a tongue twister. And yet, every actor in this movie is directed to mumble all of their dialogue. So every time they talk about this show, they like slur the title together. So they're like, The Pink Opaque. So I was thinking the entire movie, like, I guess it's kind of a cool title, but why did you choose it if you were going this route? Like, did you not think about that? God, my voice is dying. I hope it's not bothering you, but it probably is. Next we have Beetlejuice Beetlejuice. I've talked about this movie before. I hated the ending. For the most part, it's just a lame sequel to Beetlejuice that is totally unnecessary. But there are some fun, like, Tim Burton-y moments. I like seeing Michael Keaton in the role again, but didn't enjoy the movie overall. It's also very predictable. The next movie we have is called Saturday Night. It's a, I guess, biopic or true story about the making of Saturday Night Live, or doing the first performance or something. It was very boringly directed. I've made a video where I talk about it before, but yeah, there's some good performances and impressions of characters, but a lot of it was like, hey, you know that thing? Very unnecessary movie to me. I did not see the point of it. Also, it's just so clearly, like, such a stretch from what the real events are. I don't even really know what the real events are, but it was just so clearly unrealistic. Yeah, I really didn't like this movie. Next we have They Live in Time, or We Live in Time, sorry. This stars Andrew Garfield and Florence Pugh. I like them a lot, but this was not a good romantic rom-com? More of a rom-dram, I guess. Definitely more of a rom-dram. But yeah, this was not interesting or engaging to me. I found the portrayal of cancer borderline offensive and how unrealistic it was. I did not ever find it funny or charming. I thought it was really lame. I think the main characters being like kind of rich assholes made them very unlikable. Did not like this movie. Next we have Y2K. Fred Durst is in this movie, which is cool. Other than that though, I mean, I guess there's some cool effects. It's just dumb and annoying and like kind of a stupid concept. It's like, oh, what if Y2K was real? And they don't really do anything like that fun or interesting with that. Tim Heidecker's in this movie. That's cool. But yeah, I just kind of found it annoying. I didn't like the performances. I found them really unfunny. Next we have Trap. I kind of like this movie, but more so ironically. I mean, it's kind of hard to tell sometimes, like, how intentional it was to be kind of, like, cheesy and bad. I kind of love the fact that this movie is clearly only made so M. Night can advertise his, is it his daughter? His daughter's music? Or, like, niece's music? I don't know. But, yeah, it was very silly and dumb, and the main character is supposed to be this, like, evil genius, but every time he's successful at one of his schemes, it's literally just by, like, pure luck. So it's not, like, interesting to watch. None of the writing is, like, clever in that way. And, yeah, very, very dumb. But I was kind of enjoying it for how, like, stupid and over the top it was. And then the ending was, like, kind of took itself too seriously and was, like, annoying and still dumb, but not in, like, a fun way anymore. I'd watch it again with friends, but this is definitely a very, very bad movie. Next we have Longlegs, which I'm giving a very low review to. I just talked about The Monkey and how much I really did not like that. Osgood Perkins is just a director I am not jiving with. But yeah, this movie was incredibly boring to me. I felt that the communication of information was so slow. I felt like Nick Cage was distracting, and he's also barely in the movie, and I felt misled by the advertising. I felt like a lot of the acting was not that good. I found the main character to be the best part of the movie, but even she is not very interesting. I did not like the reveal at the end. I really did not like much of anything about this movie. It's not terrible, but I really, really didn't like it, and I practically left the theater angry. Next we have Moana 2. This should have never gone out in theaters. It's pretty bad. It is maybe the most forgettable kids movie I've ever seen. There is one musical sequence with like a bat lady that was okay, but other than that, I literally can't talk about this because it has left my brain. All I remember about this movie is it is a very obvious downgrade in terms of basically every aspect that made the original film good, and I don't even really love the original Moana. But in terms of voice acting, in terms of animation, in terms of storytelling, just in terms of music especially, just everything feels like such a fucking downgrade. Next we have Joker Folie à Deux. I think if you enjoy the original Joker, you will hate this. The more you love that movie, the more you will hate this movie, because it is a slap in the face to fans of the original movie. It seems like the director regrets making it, and it's just boring and pointless, and the music is horribly auto-tuned. There's a lot of actors I really like in this movie, and I was just embarrassed for all of them. Not because they're giving bad performances, but like, God, this movie is so bad. Nothing of consequence happens. It definitely did not need to be 2.5 hours long. God, why? I don't even know what the commentary was supposed to be by the end of the movie. I don't know what I'm supposed to take away from this movie, what the point of it was by the end. Next, we have Terrifier 3. Maybe it's my favorite of the Terrifier movies, but they're all very trashy. They have pretty incredible gore, and I was entertained by that, and nothing else. There's nothing else that's good about these movies. I guess the clown character is kind of entertaining at some points. It's got one good thing about it, and everything else about these movies are pretty unengaging and boring. So boring. This movie feels like it's 4 hours long. Yeah, boring ass movie. All of them are. They're all too long, and their only appeal is the gore. So whatever. If you want really over-the-top gore, and that's all you care about, you'll love this movie. Next, we have Fall Guy. I kind of hated this, even though I probably shouldn't hate it as much as I did. Ryan Gosling is kind of funny in it, but yeah, it's a bad movie. It's a bad movie about making bad movies. It's a bad movie in terms of the rom-com elements. It's such a predictable and boring rom-com with this, like, Hollywood backdrop, which was just so, like, it felt cynical to me in a way that I just did not enjoy. I left the movie feeling very, very annoyed. Next, we have Kung Fu Panda 4. This movie feels like a scam. Do not see this movie. It clearly had a much smaller budget than all of the other Kung Fu Panda movies. It is not nearly as good as any of the other ones, even the third one, which I think is a severe downgrade from the first two. Awkwafina is in it, and no one likes her, so I don't know why she's in every movie, but yeah, she's in it, and she's annoying, as always, and I don't have anything else to say about this. Next, we have Smile 2. A lot of people really like this movie, and I kind of understand why. The acting is not bad. There's some good performances. There's some kind of cool cinematography. The production value is impressive. Clearly, there's a lot of money being given to these movies. But with all that being said, no matter how much frosting you put on a turd, it's not going to taste good. It's still going to taste like shit. This movie is total garbage to me because nothing happens. Nothing in either of these movies happens until the ending, basically. It's all just hallucinations, so nothing feels of consequence, nothing's scary, nothing's interesting. It's just like, okay, I know the character is hallucinating, and they don't really think they are, but I know they are, so it's just so boring. Also, these protagonists just treat the situations in both of these movies like fucking idiots. It's just 2 hours of watching them be scared by not scary stuff, and there's nothing for me here. Nothing for me to enjoy. I don't like anything about this movie, even if there are elements surrounding it in terms of, like, technical elements that I guess are technically good, but the story is so unengaging and stupid to me. The concept is so terrible that I can't enjoy anything about it. It also doesn't have an original bone in its body. Next, we have Venom 2. I don't remember anything about this movie. I've seen all the Venom movies, and they just slip my mind right after I watch them. Next, we have Red 1. I don't know who this movie is for. I guess, like, 5th or 6th graders. This concept is way too childish for adults, but there's also too much profanity and violence for children. So for the whole movie, I was like, who is this movie for? It's a comedy where Santa Claus in the North Pole is like the CIA, and they take Christmas very seriously. And isn't that funny how seriously they're taking Christmas? And the movie has that one joke and tries to use it for 2 hours. I'm not a fan of a lot of these actors. The production value looked awful, even though there was clearly a lot of money put in the movie. There's one scene with, like, Santa's brother Krampus, which was kind of entertaining for me, but yeah, I hated it. Next, we have the Society for Magical... Can't say that last part. Yeah, I think some people wanted this to be, like, Black Harry Potter, and some people were expecting, like, a clever satire on this film stereotype. If you don't know what this is, it's a concept created by Spike Lee, where a black character in a movie kind of helps out the white character and only serves to kind of help them out, and is often, like, magical or something. And this movie does nothing with that concept. It is not an intelligent satire in any way. It is a bad romance movie mixed with, like, I don't even know if I could call it a satire. I don't feel like there was any commentary about this here. I like the actor who introduces the main character to this world. I forget his name. I thought he did a pretty good job. But again, we have Justice Smith as the main character, and I do not like any of his performances. So yeah, he also brings down this movie for me. And, the ending is horrible. And what an unlikable character. He, like, leaves this woman in the middle of New York, and she doesn't even care. Like, this character deserves consequences for his decisions, because he's kind of an asshole, but he doesn't get them. The movie treats him like he deserves all these good things that happen to him. And he doesn't. He's severely unlikable. Stop. Next we have Kraven the Hunter. This was so boring and such an ugly color palette, and the performances sucked, and the action wasn't cool or interesting, and God, yeah, what a boring ass movie. And I hate the ending, because they expect they're going to make more movies with this character, and they're obviously not, so it feels very unsatisfying, as if they're leading up to something, and they can't, obviously, so yeah, sucks. Next we have Afraid. This is a horror movie about AI, and the acting is horrendous, especially the child acting. The concept is so stupid and doesn't understand what it's talking about with these technical concepts at all. It's incredibly bad in every department. The story doesn't even really make sense. It was almost so bad it's funny, but not quite. Yeah, it's a horrible, horrible, bad horror movie. Next we have Madam Web. This is another Sony Spider-Man movie without Spider-Man. Everybody is trashing on this film. It's so bad it goes to good. It's hilarious. I love how cringe and weird the decision-making process was behind this movie, clearly. I love the way the director has been talking about it as if this is like an art house movie. So funny. But yeah, everything about this movie stinks, so I don't even have to talk about it. Next we have Borderlands. Oh my god, what a bad movie. There's so many stupid scenes. There's a scene where, like, they're trying to walk across a bridge without it collapsing, and they all walk at once. It's like, what were you thinking? The weight would break the bridge. Why don't you go one at a time? Like, there's so many, like, stupid scenes where I was just yelling at the movie. Cate Blanchett should not have been casted in this. I have never seen a group of actors care less about the movie they're in. Kevin Hart clearly did not give a shit what movie he was in. None of them feel like they even know what this movie is or what the story is. It is insanely bad. Next we have Mufasa the Lion King. I think the 2019 live-action Lion King is maybe one of the worst movies I've ever seen. Maybe my least favorite movie ever. It's so bad. I hate everything about it. Yeah, and this is just that, again, it's not as offensive because it's not, like, ruining a already perfectly good movie. It's not as frustrating because of that, but this is so dumb and ugly looking. What an awful concept for a movie. I hated it. I hated it so much. So boring, so much unnecessary scenes, so many scenes where nothing happens, and God, is the dialogue and music awful. There's one scene from the villain where he's like censoring the word like kill. Like he's like, I'm gonna kill you, but he says like, I'm gonna make you wish you weren't born. I'm gonna make you unalive. Like it felt like TikTok censoring of the word death, which was so cringy and awful. I hated it. Next we have Unfrosted. This is a movie by Jerry Seinfeld of all people, where they're doing like the space race, but it's with different cereal companies trying to create the Pop-Tart. And it is so unfunny and poorly casted and poorly acted and poorly written on every single level. It was excruciating to watch because it just has this energy that it thinks it's so funny, and it's so not funny on every level. It's trying way too hard, and God, was it so unbearable to watch. I hated this movie. Please never make another movie, Jerry Seinfeld. Do not make me sit through that again. Next we have Lumina. This movie is kind of funny for how bad it is. It is basically a movie that was made to promote the director's music, which is pretty funny. But God, this movie is also very boring, and like it looks like it's going to be like a sci-fi horror movie, and it is for the first 30 seconds, and then the next 95% of the movie is a flashback to what happened before they like went to Mars or something. And God, it is just the worst acting and dialogue ever. And then when we get to the ending with like the sci-fi horror stuff, it looks so bad. The worst costumes ever, the worst effects, the worst acting. It is terrible on every single level, but it's a little funny. So if you're interested in seeing one of the worst movies of the year, go see this movie. But it's not the worst movie of the year. The worst movie of the year is Megalopolis. It's kind of funny that this is my bottom movie because I, in a way, feel like it kind of has similarities with my favorite movie. It's kind of about the American experience and like criticizing the American dream. There is a comment on my video about this, which you should watch if you want to hear me talk about it in more detail. But there's a comment I got where someone, I think, was trying to point out hypocrisy in me saying that I found the movie incomprehensible, but I also found the movie like simplistic and easy to understand. Those things do not conflict with each other. It's not hypocrisy. Those are what make the movie bad. It is a simplistic, easy to understand concept. Like, what he's saying is so obvious, and yet he makes it in the most inaccessible, most overly complex, confusing, dumb way possible. It's already a dumb, simplistic message, but he just complicates it to a point where it is so boring and confusing and just everything about this movie is terrible. God, I'm so embarrassed for the actors in this movie because I love a lot of them. But yeah, the green screens were awful. The sets were awful. The dialogue was the worst I have seen in so many years. I will say though, I have never seen a movie like this. I have never seen a movie like this, and I don't think I ever will see another movie like this. So if you are really curious for seeing a movie that you will never see again, you will never see a movie like this again, because it is a $120 million self-financed movie that doesn't make any sense and is just a clusterfuck with like the worst filmmaking possible, then you should go see this movie because you will never see a movie like that again, I assume. But it is unwatchable for me. It is so boring. It is so boring and painful to watch because there is no access. It is inaccessible. There's no way you can get into this movie. It doesn't let you. It stops you from any ability to enjoy it. And that is why it is the worst movie of the year. My voice has been falling apart for the last like hour and a half, so I need to stop this video here. But thank you so much for watching, especially if you watched the entire thing. And I hope you have some movies that you're interested in seeing. I hope you enjoyed my commentary. Please comment what you think of any of my takes. I would love to continue the discussion in the comments. If you have any questions, I like to answer comments. I don't get that many, so I will always respond if you want me to. But yeah, please like the video so it gets recommended to people. This was so much effort to make on my part. I had to watch so many movies this past week. That's why I haven't done any reviews. So, wah for me. Feel bad for me and like this video out of pity. Just kidding. Like and subscribe if you'd like to. But yeah, I am done. So I will see you guys in the next video.